Curly hair drawings are really useful because they help us understand the structure of hair in a very unique formation. In many ways, learning how to draw curls helps us understand concepts of hair that can be applied to all hair types, thus making it a really useful drawing exercise not only to understand how to represent curls, but also how to represent the structure of hair, highlights and shadows. So with that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org where we explore various art related topics. And in today's video, we will be looking at how to draw curls. Now, curly hair often seems complicated because of how intertwined and twisted it appears, making it seem a little bit difficult to represent through a sketch. However, this tutorial breaks it down in very doable and digestible steps. Now, this tutorial is done on a digital device. However, we will be going through a very fundamental process of drawing curly hair, so we will only need some simple tools. If you are using traditional tools, you can use tools such as pencils, charcoal, or really any tool that is really good for sketching and drawing. So in this tutorial on how to draw curly hair, we'll first break down some concepts associated with individual curls, and then we'll look at how to utilize these concepts within an actual drawing of a character with curly hair. So the first thing we want to do is understand the fundamental of curls. So we first want to understand the basic structure of a curl and how it creates these unique moments of shadow and highlights in the hair shafts. So we can start to think about the curl as a flat structure that unravels like a ribbon. As it unravels and the curls curl in on themselves, it will have these exposed areas that have a lot of highlights. On the inside of the curls is where there'll be more shadows, which is where the hair will be the darkest. The intention is to set the undertones of shadows and highlights with a softer mid-tone shading that will establish these darker and lighter areas within the hair. From there, we can strategically integrate shading into those areas where the hair is less exposed to a light source. With these mid-tones guiding us, we can start to incorporate line work over them to suggest some texture that is unique to hair strands. So this is where we can add line work within the shadowed areas to define the hair shafts. Slowly, these various concepts will work together to create a realistic curl, and this is the general idea of how to represent curls. Now, what we want to do with a character is we can be a little bit more loose with how we represent these qualities, but the idea is to kind of work with these concepts and put them into various little moments or segments of curls within a larger structure of hair. So the next thing we're going to look at is contextualizing the concepts within a character design. So we can now work with these learned concepts and apply them to a full body of hair on a character. So the first thing we want to do is start by shaping the head and hair structure. So this is where we can start with forming a character. In this case, let's work with a female character with longer curls. And we can start simply by forming the general head shape and slowly starting to establish the outline or shape of the hair structure. We can work with a reference if need be, but the intention is to set up the facial structure for a more accurate contextualization of the curly hair drawing in a character design. With simple line work, we can start forming the general hair structure of the character, where we can then apply the ribbon-like movements within the various hair strands of the hair. Again, we do want to think about how these ribbon-like structures kind of conglomerate together or group together and form these larger segments within the hair, and then we can have moments where there are more thinner segmentations of curly hair structures moving in various directions. So we want to take our time forming the hair structure. We can also play around with how curled we'd like these ribbon-like strands to be. In some areas, once again, they can be elongated and slowly unraveled, and in other cases they can be tightly coiled up. The idea is to form the structure of these various hair curls around the face, making sure some of them fall along the side of the face and that some are slightly seen towards the back of the head. So try to take your time with the simple sketch of forming the curly hair structure as you shape the character and the curls around the head. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is establishing midtones in the curly hair drawing, and this is where we start to work with some soft shading to establish the areas of shadows and highlights within the various curls. So remember, the idea is to establish shadows in the twists and highlights in the protruding areas, or where the curls start to protrude outwardly and therefore become more exposed to a light source. Naturally, curls do twist, so this means some areas will twist inward and some will twist outward. This means we want to make sure that the areas where the hair twists inwardly is slightly darker and the areas that twist outwardly are slightly light. Once again, we want to take our time establishing these lighter layers of shading, also thinking about how the hair structures in the foreground will be more distinct. So try to go through each curl, thinking about where shadows and highlights would be placed, and we really want to maintain that ribbon-like concept throughout each curl, allowing that to govern the placement of our shadow formation in the hair structure. As we establish the midtones, we can work with strokes of lines to establish these lighter shadow formations, and we can also think about the hair hair structure as a whole and how it will create large shadow formations inside the hair where it is bunched together. So naturally there'll be these, once again, segmentations or conglomerations of hair that group together, and that will cause more shadow formations inside the hair structure. Now, as we continue, we also want to think about the larger structures of the hair that overlap other areas of the hair. So this is where we'll find more of a general shadow formation, less than these very distinct line-like shadow formations, making some areas of the hair darker than others. Once again, we'll find this to be common within the hair structure. So as we continue, we do want to just think about where those qualities of, or those larger sections of hair overlap to create those larger shadow formations. Now, as we continue, we can take our time establishing the shadows throughout the entire hair structure, making sure to think about where the highlights will be placed in areas of the hair as well. And this is specifically for the curls that curl outwardly, taking us into the next step, which is establishing these highlights in the hair. So once we have established these midtones, we now want to work with an eraser to emphasize highlights within negative spaces. We do this by erasing areas of the hair where the curls will curl outwardly and be more exposed to the light source. Again, we want to think about how the curls twist outwardly and inwardly as they curl, naturally causing moments to protrude and therefore be more exposed to a light source. So this is where we use our shading and erasing strategically to emphasize lighter areas in the hair where we see the outward curls. Now, as we continue, we can start considering how the light source will interact with the surface area of the hair as the shadows and highlights seamlessly merge as the hair twists. So take your time going through each hair curl, really considering how every structure of each curl twists inwardly and outwardly. Now, it is important to consider the areas of the hair that are exposed, as it is revealed to the light source as it unravels in that ribbon-like fashion. So we can also be really loose with these highlights as we establish these negative spaces in the areas of the hair that curl outwardly. This means we can simply erase a large patch into the outward curves of each curl, and the idea is that collectively all of these moments of negative space don't necessarily need to be kind of very linear, so we can have these larger kind of patchy sections in these protruding qualities of the curls, and collectively they'll all work together to create a more realistic representation of highlights. So we can be very loose with these highlights as we establish these negative spaces in the area of the hair that curl outwardly. This means we can simply erase a large patch, so don't worry too much about creating these perfect linear moments of negative space with your eraser. In doing so, we also want to just be conscious of the size of each curl and therefore how large each highlight section or patch should be. Otherwise, it is a simple task that just requires erasing in the right areas, but it's simply a matter of taking your time, understanding the size of each of these curls, understanding the protruding areas, and just integrating some negative spaces into those areas. But as we move on, we're going to start refining the details in the curls. Now we can start working strategically with line work to bring more refined structure and shape to the different curled areas in the hair, and this is where we now start to really think about the curls made up of various hair strands. Now, as we work line work into the curly hair drawing, the idea is to work from shadowed areas, extending lines into the highlighted areas. So we're basically kind of representing these shadows in an elongated fashion with line work that extend from the actual shadowed areas. So we have these larger shadowed areas, and integrating line work does two things. It simultaneously represents the actual texture of hair through this linear fashion, but it also represents these smaller moments of linear shadows that run through the shaft of the hair. So by doing this, we not only refine the outlines of the hair structure, but we also define hair texture throughout the hair shaft and extend the texture into the highlighted areas of the hair. Simply by building up these moments of shading with line work, we'll start to see how collectively they work together with the larger groups of shading or midtone shading to make the hair more realistic in appearance. So we can also start to refine the entire character with some line work to maintain a consistency in aesthetic with a stylistic effect of line work. However, we want to make sure we go through each curl and refine it with some line work, and as we continue integrating these lines into the various curled areas of the hair, we can see how it also sharpens the hair structure of the curls. The idea is to simply continue this process and be patient, making sure we are also considering the scale of our line work for various size curls. So make sure for these larger curl sections or segments of hair, we can make our lines slightly thicker, and then for thinner sections we can make our lines slightly thinner. But otherwise guys, there you have it, how to draw curly hair through a few simple steps. Remember, understand the fundamentals of the curls, make sure you build up these shadow formations with midtones, establish these general sections of shading, and then from there you can refine the hair structure with line work. And when it comes to contextualizing curls within a character with various curls in one large structure of hair, we can be quite loose with our details because collectively they'll work together to represent a realistic representation of curly hair. If you did like this video, please do let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear back from you guys if you're interested in similar or related topics, and you can show your support by liking and subscribing. This helps us to grow the channel, which ultimately enables us to make more art related content for you guys, which we love to do. But otherwise, thanks again for tuning in. That is it from me today. Until next time, cheers.